Oh, okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another cool review for you from the brand BOLDR Supply Company. Now, a little bit about them. They're based out of Singapore and Malaysia. They manufacture watches and watch gear that are pretty much super tough, stylish, yet functional. And they really always are ready for adventure. That's kind of their theme. It's their ethos, and it tends to be what they deliver on. Now, this particular type of watch is outside of kind of one of their core themes, which is typically going to be field watches. This is a dive watch. Some key common characteristics and design language. When you're looking for a diver, of course, you're going to want water resistance, typically through some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. Now, this particular release is their Odyssey Freediver in the white frost variant. This typically will come on the tropic style rubber straps that you see on the kind of left and right flanks of the watch. But I'm such a bracelet guy, and the cool thing is that BOLDR actually offer it separately. So I ended up pulling the trigger after receiving the watch, and I purchased the bracelet for $139. And I have to say it was really worth it because I think it really adds another dimension to the watch. Although I do like the aesthetic with the straps. Unfortunately, my wrist is pretty big, so the straps just didn't offer me the comfort level I was hoping for. Just typically, I like to have a little extra length on there, especially when I'm wearing something kind of at a sporty capacity. In this case, it was on one of the last few holes on there, so for me it was definitely better to have the experience on the bracelet. So I'm happy to share that with you guys, and I think it's something that, you know, just press photos and whatnot don't really show the versatility while it is on bracelet. So hopefully a few of you are looking forward to checking that out here in the video. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, so very quickly we'll take a look at these straps, which are very nice. You can see matching finish there with that nice bright bead blast, and then you also have quick release spring bars, which did make kind of putting them on and off very easily. You can see also it does have a nice taper and contour, so it was very comfortable on wrist. And these are, you know, pretty soft. They're not, you know, the most just jaw-dropping style of rubber straps that I've ever used, but they definitely did the work. I just wish that it would have had a little bit more length, so that while on wrist I just had a little bit of extra tongue there, tail hanging off that I could tuck into here. So with that said, let me get these out of the way and pull this bad boy up. Wow. So you're probably able to understand why this particular model is called the White Frost. Check out that dial. It has this beautiful pale silver tone to it. Wow, it just catches light in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's very cool and you know, kind of renders visually very white, and then other times it can take on some warmer tones as well, and it really gets into those kind of silvery color palettes, which I really enjoy. Now, the watch on the rubber comes in at $519 directly from BOLDR, and then if you want to add in $139 for the bracelet, still a pretty good deal. The dimensions on it are 40 millimeters by 14.2, and then 48 millimeters lug to lug, although you can see that it does have a male end link, so it's going to extend just slightly further than that. Let me give the polished chamfers here a quick little wipe off camera so you guys can get a beautiful look there. Check that out. I really enjoy those angular facets all over this case. I mean, look at that. It just adds another dimension, and it's not something that I would ever kind of plan for, but it is something that has jumped out at me lately when I do see companies adding these high polished bevels and whatnot on a matte blasted case, which I think looks really, really great. Now, a little bit about this particular model. It's really built for freedivers and underwater adventurers, and it channels kind of the freediving spirit as you dive into your everyday challenges. It's fitted to a lightweight yet durable EPDM rubber strap, as you guys saw earlier. And this particular release is actually limited to 100 units, and it does have the serial number on the case back, which we'll get to very quickly there. Let's see, nice focus. You can see it has that really cool kind of Kraken style, and this is number 81 of 100. So very cool from that standpoint. You'll also notice it is actually brushed on the underside of the bracelet, as well as brushed with some high polished accents on the case back. So I thought that was a nice touch that you really kind of don't see when you look at the watch at the face value. So I think that's kind of a fun, you know, little group of details that really only the owner and the person wearing the watch will be able to appreciate. Now, this dial is very nice, but the reason why you can see it is because it does have that really nice flat sapphire crystal with that inner AR coating, which do a great job of negotiating reflections, so you can really understand the depth and texture that are there. Also, you do get a rotating bezel that's fully lumed. Ooh, 120 clicks. Very nice. Really no backplay to report. I'm trying to force some backplay there. Ooh, lines up very nicely. Sounds good. Feels good fast. Also slow. Nice and smooth. I like the balance in between kind of the smoothness of the turn mixed with the notchiness and the tactile feel of each click. So it's nice to have that balance. Some can be overly and harshly clicky. Some can just be a little bit too smooth and feel you know, a little bit looser. Because of that. Now you also do get a screw down crown, which is signed. You can see it's not very long, but it is quite wide. And it really suits the case architecture. And man, these lines, there's something about them. It's very, very cool. I love the angles and facets, and that's definitely something that's within the BOLDR design language. That's part of their aesthetic and their DNA. Now, although you couldn't see it, because of the solid case back, this is actually housing a Miyota 9015, which is a great movement. Typically, you'll see that used in kind of thinner watches. This is a bit thicker, but honestly, at 14 millimeters, it's actually not overly thick. It's really just the design language. So in this case, you know, would it be cooler to see this thin? Yeah, sure. But I think it definitely works with the overall look. So it's on and within the theme. So it's more of a you know, of a nitpick versus a drawback. Now, you do get that really cool, solid embossed Kraken motif there, which is nice, and you've seen on, you know, previous models within this line. I actually reviewed the Meteorite dial prototype. This is a full production model, thankfully, so we can kind of count on what you're seeing here is going to be your similar experience in terms of what you'll see if you decide to become an owner and pick one of these up. Now, a little bit about the details on the dial there, guys. You do get that really nice pale silver textured grain dial. You have those raised kind of printed indices and matte blasted hands. You also do get the date at 6 o'clock, which is nice, as well as this very tall kind of stepped chapter ring that even gives you a bit of kind of a rehot style, because the essentially the indexes are on top but then not on the inside. So you can see it adds just a nice bit of dimension there, especially because the dial, the indices are relatively flat, although wow, that dial texture is really coming to life. I really dig that. Look at the way the light just hits that. Very, very cool. You do get Swiss Superluminova BGW9, also water resistance up to 300 meters or 30 atmospheres or 990 feet. And then to go back to the strap here, it does have a nice taper from about 20 millimeters down to 18. And then, of course, it does offer you a matching buckle, which suits perfectly with this case. So if you are going to go that route, Definitely a very nice tone match there. I dig the kind of tone on tone that they went with. I think it's very handsome. And again, it's really just the length for my slightly larger wrist that kind of had me. Plus, I'm generally a, bracelet kind of guy. So with that, the bracelet has a 20 millimeter lug width, of course, matches the watch. And then you do get solid end links, and they are quick release, which is great. Also solid 3 links here on the bracelet. It tapers from 20 down to 18, and then it also does offer screw-in connecting pins, which is great, so a lot of people love those. And then you also do get quite a few holes here on this milled clasp for micro adjust, all manually made, of course, which you'll have to kind of do versus being able to do on the fly with some type of quick adjust system. But it also, makes sense for the price, and I think everything flows really well. You can see that nice beveled edge still shows even in the full matte finish, and it is nicely signed here on the fold over lock. And then you get the push button release there on the folding mechanism, which is also fully milled and also fully matte. So very nice from that standpoint. So let's go ahead, get this piece on wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears really nicely, and even if I get up close to the camera and there's some lens distortion there, which makes the watch appear a little bit visually larger, you can see that it still is quite tidy across my 7¼ inch wrist. It's actually about 7¼ inches on the wrist bone, but I've been wearing my watches a little bit higher up on the wrist recently, so it's probably creeping more towards the territory of 7½ inches. So you can see this wears really, really well. I'm really digging it. I like the look. Again, that kind of tone on tone, just a lot of silvers. Yes, it's low contrast, so those of you that are looking for ultimate legibility might not be super thrilled with this, but those of you who are looking for something with a lot of visual interest and play, look at, although this is all, of course, matte blasted, you can see those little folds and accents there catch light in a lot of different ways, which add to the overall look, and then you do get a lot of visual interest. And you can see it's actually not super tall on the wrist, which is nice. Check that out. So it does wear really nicely considering the size, but it's meant to be a beefy diver. So those of you who are into the really vintage style stuff, you're probably not going to be thrilled at this one already. But those of you who are into kind of more modern, beefy and chunky dive watches, this could be really right up your alley, because the nice thing is, it really does have some pretty premium and optimal scale at 40 millimeters. So very, very cool, well dialed in, feels great on the wrist, and honestly is very, very handsome. So with that said, let's go ahead, get it off the wrist, set up some Lume Shots, low light transitions, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, as you can see, that BGW9 looks really fantastic. So although in regular light, it's definitely a little bit lower on the contrast side, you can see that in darkness, it really, really does shine. And you do have great indexing there on that fully lumed bezel, which also do help in terms of, timekeeping at a glance. One thing I like to work in during these Lume Shots is some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to be coming in and out of a building, maybe walking underneath an overhang, or just kind of, spending time inside your favorite automobile or underneath the shade of a tree. You can see in transition, this thing is gorgeous. I will say, after wearing it outdoors, when you come inside, it almost gives it a new life, because this lume is so strong. You're going to be able to see those blue tones just kind of jump out at you. And then even if I get into some harsher lighting conditions here, very high contrast, of course, with that bead blasted finish, you're gonna get a very nice, even, consistent matte finish on there. Very nicely done. So you're not going to be able to expose any types of, you know, kind of flaws or anything within that finish, because it is very consistent by nature. You can also see the way that the dial grabs the light, again transitioning kind of from that visually white to kind of other tints and tinges of silvery tones. Very, very cool. Very nice. And this is what I see a lot of times when I'm wearing this watch. Actually, let me hit it a little bit with some black light action there so you guys can get a little bit of just a taste of what this thing looks like kind of in that mixed lighting condition when you come in from outdoors, and the markings are just pumping away, which is really great as you have it on the wrist. So it almost, instead of being monochromatic and kind of this tone on tone, you actually get this really cool blast of blue that injects in the minute you get some light on there, and it receives anything close to a full charge, which it's definitely not getting just being here underneath the Hot Studio lights. Now, closing thoughts on here, guys. On the wrist, it feels super solid and purpose-built. It does feel a hair top heavy, I think, but the bracelet does help it feel more planted on the wrist. So I would say with the strap, you might feel it might feel a little bit less balanced, but on the bracelet, I think it really helps balance it out, especially if you're going to be active and whatnot while you're wearing it. Now, in terms of model variants, this is also available in a citrus orange or a mint green, which also do come with matching rubber strap options. Plus, you do have, of course, the previous on bracelet variations, which are still available. Now, in terms of comparable models, there's definitely stiff competition at this price point. Even if you don't buy the bracelet and you're still keeping it at around $519, that's still a tough place to be in the market. But I think for this particular kind of more rugged aesthetic, you probably won't be cross-shopping too much. I mean, this does compare well against something like, let's say, the Helson Shark Diver. So you might be cross-shopping it against something like that, which has a very similar aesthetic, but it's not like somebody's just going to be shopping this against, you know, something that's a little bit more mainstream. This definitely has a really interesting, rugged aesthetic to it and a special vibe that kind of, I think you have to have a certain flair and kind of attention for these types of details for you to really enjoy it. But I think this aesthetic will speak to a lot of people. It definitely does to me, kind of within that EDC space. I mean, it just feels and looks like just a good piece of kit and a nice kind of tool watch, which I can absolutely appreciate. So, you know, with all that said, I'd say bottom line here, guys, this is definitely BOLDR's, again, reinforces the fact that this is their first diver with a lot of crossover potential into a more mainstream market, and mostly because of the size. A lot of what BOLDR does is very large, very angular, and very specific. This definitely has, you know, I think some less mainstream aspects, but at the same time, because of the scale, because of kind of the handsome nature, the well-balanced aesthetic, as well as the nicely balanced proportions, I think that it's going to catch some people's eyes, and maybe those who aren't super into BOLDR, this could be the watch that gets them kind of exploring this brand. And it's a great brand, guys. I have their Venture Field Watch, as well as their Explorer Adventure watch, which is fantastic as well. So for me, this is kind of, you know, it's part of a 3-watch trifecta that they have, and I have to say I'm really enjoying it. So with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.